Okay, so we are live. Thank you very much, Zviko, for joining us today. Zviko is the founder of Ambitious Tribe, and she is calling in from Australia. Whereabouts in Australia are you, Zviko?
So I'm in Adelaide, South Australia. Thank you for having me, Gordon. I'm really excited to be here.
No, you're very welcome. So Zviko is the founder of Ambitious Tribe and is an expert in all things personal branding. So hopefully we're going to get some nice tips from her regarding growing a personal brand and how that relates to entrepreneurs and startups. So Zviko, can you give us maybe a bit of an overview about Ambitious Tribe, how it came to be, and I guess maybe your journey in personal branding yourself and how maybe that played into the creation of Ambitious Tribe?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually originally from a country called Zimbabwe. It's near South Africa, like a small landlocked country in Southern Africa. And I moved to Australia about 5.5 years ago. So when I moved here, the first thing I realized was basically I was a nobody. And in South Australia, especially, it's all about who you know, not what you know. So I quickly realized that I was really at the bottom of the totem pole, and I needed to figure out a way to get my career going without having much experience in Australia. So what I started to dabble into is LinkedIn. That was one of the first platforms that I started to really enjoy just being on and seeing, like, reading articles, like looking through content. But what I started to realize is that the more I interacted on there and the more that I reached out to people and published interesting content, he started to come to me. So at the time when I moved here, I was actually here as a master's student, which lasted about 2 years. And by the end of that master's student, I had managed to go through several marketing internships because that was my major. And that's really hard in Australia, especially if you're an international student and you're not from here. It's really hard to get those. And that was just all through networking. So just going to lots of networking events, and then also always linking up with those people on LinkedIn and making sure that I deliver content on there. So we stay in touch and I interact with them. And that's when I realized the power of personal branding. So that's how that started off. And after a few years of working in the corporate world, I finally decided to branch out on my own and start Ambitious Tribe. Yeah.
Awesome. So it's cool how it was, I guess, birthed out of your own innate need to build your personal brand after moving to a new country and coming into a new space. So yeah, maybe can you tell us a bit about then what Ambitious Tribe does and kind of what's the kind of the needs that you try to serve for an ideal customer of someone who's trying to build a personal brand?
So for me, I'm all about my secret weapon, or my genius zone, as some people refer to it, like me,
Yeah.
is content marketing. So I'm really good with creating content, creating engaging content that people want to interact with and that people want to pay attention to. So that's sort of what differentiates me. And I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs, especially when they're starting out, they assume that social media ads are like this magic bullet, and that it's all going to be okay. They can build their products and they can start their service, and then they'll sort out the marketing later or their branding later, just by using ads and all these to get customers through ads, and also very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So my sort of take on it is that I work on building like an organic audience. So for something like LinkedIn, which is what I focus on the most, I'll basically take over my client's LinkedIn. So from revamping the entire LinkedIn profile, doing like customer research and market research, and then starting to create that content regularly and consistently that matches the audience, that the audience wants to see from them. Mm-hmm. And then that's how they grow their audience. So while they're building their product or while they're still launching, in the background, I'm doing all this work. So when they finally do launch, they have an audience to launch to. And yeah, and that's what I do. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's a much better way of doing things rather than relying on ads or trying to copy the bigger companies, because and Yeah, so I reckon just organic content is definitely the way to go for small to medium-sized business owners.
Absolutely. So I have a couple of lead-on questions based on that, because
Sure.
personal branding, obviously it's in the name. It's personal to you or your individual personality or the brand that you're building. And obviously that is quite personal, to state the obvious. But in, let's say, trying to, first of all, I wanted to ask you about communicating that value from you as a person or a brand, and trying to communicate that online. There's obviously I'm not going to say a disconnect, but there's a bridge. There's a bridge that needs to be crossed, I guess, with regards to how you communicate that value of yourself and of your brand to an online audience. So I guess, how do you tackle that? Because it's obviously not an easy thing to communicate. And I guess, what's maybe some of your strategies or tips for how people can bridge that gap with communicating their own message on digital platforms?
That's a really good question. So the first thing I would say is that completely get out of the mindset of sales when you're building your personal brand, because with personal branding as well, I'm realizing that the trend moving forward is people prefer human to human connection. So they're not as interested in following your business or your business page. They want to follow Gordon, or they want to know the person behind the brand. And so it's a bad idea to start pushing sales just on your LinkedIn or wherever as part of building a brand, because no one wants to be sold to, right? So that's the first thing. Just completely forget about selling and start educating. So what I found that works really well is when people feel like they're getting value from you, even if, and sometimes it's free value. So to you, it might be oh, but I'm giving away all my secrets, but not really actually, because the more you give, the more you get back. And it's something that it's sort of a mindset shift, because I feel like a lot of us grow up in this scarcity mindset. So it's oh my God, I have to hold all my secrets to my chest and I can't tell anyone. And but actually the people who get ahead and the ones who start killing it really early on are the ones who give, because that's how they end up growing such a loyal following. And also when someone looks at all the content that they're putting out and all this value they're giving out, they're oh my goodness, imagine if I paid for this, how much more value I would get. So so don't sell and focus on education and giving. That would be my top tips.
Awesome. So when you are working with a client, let's say, there's another, I guess, small barrier that you need to kind of overcome, in that you're trying to translate their message as well. So they're coming through you to communicate their message. And then you need to do that across sometimes multiple platforms. Maybe it's sometimes just a single platform. But I guess, how do you think about, first of all, extracting the message from your client and then distributing that across maybe single or multiple channels? So I'm kind of just maybe trying to get at your thought process on how you extract that from the client and then begin to turn that into content or stories or value across multiple platforms, maybe, and how to deliver that kind of message consistently and coherently across those platforms.
I get that. So usually I actually recommend my clients just focus on maximum 2 links to other platforms. And then in terms of extracting their sort of value, and then me being able to communicate that to their customers, I find actually it's a good idea to have someone with fresh eyes. So my whole thing is that it's not about the founder, it's not about the entrepreneur, it's all about these potential customers. So what I'm trying to understand is, what do they want? So what do they want from their founder? What do they want from the entrepreneur? So that's why the customer research and the market research at the beginning is very important. And to me, that's one thing that a lot of people miss, or they feel like it's not as important, so maybe they don't do it as well. But I spend a lot of time doing that whenever I have a new client. And so I start to understand, okay, this is what triggered the current customer to finally buy. And also this is the type of content that they enjoy. And I do a lot of research and working with the entrepreneur as well, because obviously they know the industry really well. And then together we just end up creating a really good team effort where it's a bit of a tag team. And yeah, so that's basically my process. I mean, it sounds simple. It's just that a lot of people maybe are just impatient, or it's kind of the boring bit, like the research part. So a lot of people just skip over that. But then in the long term, it really helps and it pays off. Yeah, quite a lot.
Amazing. Yeah, I think obviously putting in that research at the start is such an important step to just map that process or map your strategy, I guess, before you begin.
Yeah.
And then you're able to deliver a more consistent message. And obviously that's what you are an expert in. So it's nice to hear that, like, you're not just going and putting content out all over the place, and that you have a coherent strategy, I guess, behind it all, you know, which a lot of people won't see. And that's all the stuff that goes on in the back end, you know?
Yeah.
For sure. So with regards to
Exactly. A lot of people don't see that. They just see, oh, sorry, Gordon, carry on.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, a lot of people don't see the behind the scenes. Like, they see people like the Gary V's of the world and they're like, oh my God, I need to like be like that, just pushing out content all the time. And that's good, except that Gary V is doing a lot of research beforehand that you don't see. And that's why his content does so well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I guess you touched on a nice point a minute ago as well with regards to people not wanting to be sold to, let's say. So from a personal branding perspective, I guess, how do you see, and you have touched on it briefly already, but how do you see the trends with regards to the types of content people are producing now? Maybe people who you see are crafting a very good personal brand, and the types of content that they're creating, and how you kind of see maybe some trends within the space with what successful people are doing now, and then maybe some trends that you see emerging for entrepreneurs to leverage in the future.
Yeah, so I have, most of the ones I follow are Australian. So one that I love, she's really good at personal branding, and she does something similar to me, actually. Her name is String Nguyen, and she also started similar to me, where she's just started putting content up on LinkedIn and realized, this is what works, this is what doesn't. There's obviously different types of people in different industries. So my goal is always to turn that entrepreneur or that founder into like the thought leader or the go-to expert in their industry. So that's, there's a lot of noise obviously on each platform, on each social media platform. And my goal is for you to become the go-to expert. So I want, if you're not in the room and someone asks, oh my goodness, so let's say maybe you're some sort of accounting technology founder, and then someone says, oh my goodness, I need help with, the tech and on the accounting side of my business, what do I do? Even if it's like some sort of online platform, I want people to think of you like immediately. Sometimes like everyone starts recommending the same person over and over again, and they could be anywhere in the world. They don't even have to be in the room, actually. And that's my goal, basically. So yeah, so that's definitely, String is probably one of my favorite ones. And then just from different industries, there are few in there, but they're sort of like the more niche. Yeah, it's always quality over quantity as well. So it's not about, oh my God, I want to have, some people think, okay, I want to have 50,000 followers by this month. And then they get upset if they're not getting those results. But it's like, if you have that many followers and no one's engaging, what is the point? Because that means those people aren't interested in your work. So I'd rather you have like 500 hardcore super fans who will buy your product, who will share, who will encourage all their like mates to also buy from you. That's my goal.
That's a super important point as well. I mean, the engagement or the attention metric that people are using to monitor their success, I guess, and there's different metrics I'm sure that you look at, but like you said, there's no point in having a massive following if people aren't going to be engaging. So that kind of leads me on to thinking about, let's say, personal branding for an entrepreneur who's starting out with maybe a small business or a business that they want to build kind of from the ground up. And something that I think a lot of people face is a question of whether they should build a personal brand for themselves specifically, as maybe an entrepreneur or a thought leader, like you say, or begin to build
Yeah.
a brand or build a personal brand around their business itself. And a lot of the times they're not mutually exclusive, and sometimes the entrepreneur is the brand in itself, you know. And sometimes they are separate insofar as you have an entrepreneur who's a founder, and then they're running a business or a company separate from them, but still the company very much relies on them as the sole founder. So I guess, how do you maybe think about that, or what do you advise when people are trying to think about building a brand for their business versus personal brand, and if you have any insights on that?
Yeah, so that's definitely a sort of conundrum I see a lot of entrepreneurs deal with. And it, so this depends on you. Generally, I think focusing on your personal brand is probably worth more, and it's going to reap the rewards in the long term, especially. So if you think, I know we have this thing of, teasing the Instagram influencers a bit, but to be honest, it works. They could push any brand and they still get sales, right? Like, it doesn't have to be the actual company. They could decide, okay, everyone go to Macca's and buy this cheeseburger, and we're all going to do that. And there's a reason for that, because they've become thought leaders in whatever industry they're in. And so that's why, for me, I usually recommend entrepreneurs that, definitely focus on your personal brand, and then your business will sort of grow from that. And that also helps, because I know entrepreneurs is like creative people, and I know you're tinkling with another idea and another product on the side. And so this gives you freedom. So if you decide to, launch something else or expand into something else, you've still got audience. It's not like now you have to restart it all over again. So yeah, that's generally my advice.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, you as a person are going to exist oftentimes longer than some of your businesses or projects. Sometimes if you have a very successful business, obviously it's not the case, but at least if you have the view to creating multiple businesses further down the line, you as a person or a personal brand are the constant in a changing landscape, I guess. And if you build your personal brand from the beginning, I guess that's something that's going to stay with you throughout that entire journey, regardless of the businesses or the amount of companies or businesses that you start.
Exactly. And I think people should remember as well that it's not just about, like, your personal brand isn't just about the business that you're trying to grow. It's also just about your reputation as a person in general. So that follows you like throughout your career. So it's almost like having those, like if you're to get a job, how you have those, people that you use as references, always going to back you, like as a reliable person, as a trustworthy person. And that's part of your personal brand. So, and that doesn't really come through like in terms of a business's brand. So yeah, so that's another point to remember as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it harkens back to what you mentioned before. Like, people want to connect with other people and see the face behind the brand, and the people that are behind a certain project or business that's going on. So that's amazing. You kind of mentioned this already, but going back to maybe how people can approach discovery across personal branding online. And we spoke about content a little bit, but there is a lot of noise as well, like you mentioned, on different platforms. And I guess what I want to get at is, I guess, how can people refine or improve their discoverability across different platforms? And I guess the answer is somewhat by really focusing on what their unique message is as a person, but
yeah,
translating that into the different platforms is tricky. And I guess, how do you see the discoverability aspect of all the content that people are creating, and maybe what are some good ways to improve your own discoverability as a personal brand?
Well, I think in terms of the actual content, to be honest, if you've done all the steps beforehand, so the market research beforehand, and I'll actually just share like the because I use this process called, that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second is your message. So like you said, you need some sort of unique message. Doesn't have to be anything super fancy, just something that when someone like was to just read like a headline about you, they would know exactly like what you do, and they would know like whether you're the person that they need or not.
Yeah.
And then also the third M, that's the market for that message. So who are you trying to reach? What are your ideal, who are your ideal customers? And then the fourth M would be the media, like where you can share that message. Mm-hmm. So those ideal clients, where do they hang out? And remember, you've probably already have a bit of an idea from the market research to begin with. So once you have all those 4 M's in order, the actual creation of the content becomes so much easier, because you know exactly who your message is for, where you should be putting that message out, mm-hmm. how often you should be sending out your ideal clients. So you're always testing things and then improving based on feedback that you're getting. So I think, to be honest, that's probably the last thing that you should be worried about, like the actual content bit, because that's going to sort itself after if you do everything else right. It's just that a lot of people skip all those steps, all those other M's, and then they just decide to start creating content and then get upset when they're not getting any results. But that's why, because you've skipped too many steps. Yeah.
Cool.
I hope that makes sense, and it's not like, yeah.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. And I think for people starting off, it's, especially if you're starting from scratch, it's not easy. And I think some people, and myself included as well, begin to start creating content because it's almost just getting into the habit of doing that as you're trying to refine your offering, as you're trying to refine your personal brand or the specific product or service that you're offering. And yeah, I think it would be maybe from a strategic perspective better to approach it from the way you're saying. But not many people have the luxury of knowing that beforehand, I guess. So people are working it out on the fly. But it's a great point. So that's why people need expertise like yours.
Yeah. I mean, definitely if you're just starting out and like you don't have a background in marketing or like branding or anything like that, just have a routine, because all the platforms reward consistency. So there's no point in you. It's almost like going to the gym, right? Like you can sign up and then start going 6 days a week, but you've never really been like a gym person. Mm-hmm. You're going to burn out pretty quickly. And then mm-hmm. 2 weeks later, your body's sore and you can't be bothered anymore. And then you stop. And that's worse than someone who decides, okay, I'm just going to go 2 days per week and then I'll gradually increase. So I would rather you just post twice a week, maybe on the same days, just try out different content, and that's fine. And then you can gradually increase as you go along, rather than you going ham and then giving up like too soon because you get exhausted. Because I know that entrepreneurs are also doing a lot of other things in the background. And then the other thing I'll say as well is it's another reason why I think it's so important to outsource. So as soon as you have the opportunity or like the funds to be able to outsource, just do that, because honestly, it's not worth the stress. Like I personally, the things that I don't like doing and the things I'm not good at, like accounting, I just outsource now. Like as soon as I was able to afford that, that was out the door. So so don't be afraid to outsource as well. I think sometimes entrepreneurs especially can become a little bit like, they want to hold on to everything and become like, they want to, it's their baby. So they don't want their baby and they want to do everything, but no one's superhuman. You have to you need to let other people help you to move up in the world.
Absolutely. Very well said.
I have one of my mentors has a great saying where he tells me that you can't climb the ladder if your hands are full, and that's so true.
Very, very true. It's a great analogy. So one of the things that I guess I kind of see at the moment is this idea of a kind of passion economy in the online space, where I guess more and more people are being able to pursue and build businesses around their own passions. And I think this is kind of creating a whole host of new types of businesses, but also personal brands, because people are focusing on areas that they are passionate and interested in themselves. And there's a whole, I guess, cohort of sub niches being created where people are really beginning to specialize on what is unique to them. And I guess I wanted to ask you, maybe in light of what you see, do you see maybe a similar thing happening? And do maybe the types of clients that you work with or are involved with, do you see trends with something similar to that, where people are really kind of niching into their own passions and how they might be building personal brands around that?
Yes. Oh my goodness. And for me, this like trend is like makes my heart sing. It's like I feel like just too many people were trapped in just jobs they don't like or enjoy, or just in, or where there was this mentality. And I once had this mentality as well that, oh my gosh, if you're not like a coder or something, bad luck, you can't run a business because you haven't created some cool technology. But actually, you can run a business doing whatever you enjoy doing. There's probably a market for it. And I love that. Who's the guy who coined the 1,000 true fans thing? Anyway, he was
I can't remember his name either.
Yeah. But like that sort of was a switch for me as well. And I see this with my clients as well. It's like these small niches I never would have thought about, and people are leaving, the banking jobs or the whatever job it was, or maybe they had started off in like a more generic kind of business because they were too nervous to like start off really niche. And then now they're like, oh my goodness, there are actually lots of people who would pay for what I do. And it makes me really happy. And I'm seeing the same trend as well. So yeah, I agree with you, Gordon.
Awesome. Yeah,
I think it's a great trend.
I think it is, yeah. And I think even as emerging markets, I don't know, like in other parts of the world where we're going to see more people being able to create businesses around their passions, and as the internet allows for a more rich means of communication, I think it's only going to lead to a more rich palette of people and personal brands and businesses emerging in the future. So it's an exciting time to be, I think, doing anything online, and I think you're in a great position to capture that value and help others as well. So it's amazing. Is there anything else that you would like to, give in terms of advice or tips for people who are in that position, who are maybe beginning to make that move from, let's say, maybe working a full-time job, or they want to pursue something they're interested in, and how they can kickstart that, I guess, from zero, maybe, So any insights on that?
Yeah, so the first thing would be obviously make sure that you're financially ready for it. So don't just, I know there is like, it's fun to sort of just take the leap and just jump into the deep end, but definitely make sure obviously that you do have the funds to carry you through the beginning stages of your business. So if that means you have to work full time for a little bit longer, or you save up, that's fine. You can do your business on the side. That's how I started, and then transition to part-time. And then once that's sorted, start building your community and personal brand. In fact, start right now, like today. It doesn't matter if you're still like working a full-time job, start right now. It's one of those things where like a month from now, you're going to wish you started today.
Yeah.
And because it's definitely something that's worthwhile doing, even if you're not doing it like 100% correct at the moment. Imperfect action is better than no action. And you'll see the results like moving forward. Oh my goodness, it's a good thing I started a year ago, or it's a good thing I started yesterday, or whenever, because you're going to start to be growing an audience. And when you finally do launch, you're going to have an audience and people who like you and who want to buy from you. And so I would say start right now. That would be my thing. Don't wait till you're ready. Don't be nervous to hit publish. Just feel the fear and hit publish anyway. It'll be fine. And
absolutely. For sure. So one last thing I wanted to ask you about, and this is more out of interest for me personally as well, but I'm interested to know about like how you see people building a personal brand online, and then maybe if you have had the pleasure of meeting people that you've followed online in person, or how do you think do you see it translating well for a lot of people, or do you have tips for people who want to be more authentic online. Maybe authenticity is just the right way to approach it, and just be yourself online, because that's going to translate best into the real world. Yeah, I guess any insights on that, or have you had the pleasure of that before?
Yeah, well, no, not yet. So this year I was supposed to meet a few people, and then COVID got jealous and, ruined my travel plans.
Yeah, for sure.
But I've definitely seen people grow, especially on, like I said, my favorite platform is LinkedIn. I also am on Facebook a lot as well. And yeah, and I've seen people just go from like zero to just move up in the world, basically, to thousands of followers who genuinely engage and who are eager to hear from them. And a lot of that is to do with being authentic, like you mentioned. So something that I find is that a lot of maybe people who are starting out with the personal branding thing, they want to they try to copy someone else, or they're trying to be like, for LinkedIn, they're like, oh, well, it's a professional platform, be super professional. Like, no one wants to see that stuff. It's like, we're all bored to death of it. And the people who do well are the ones who are just themselves, and, they let out their personality. Like, if you see some of the stuff I post on there, some people gonna be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe she posted that. But you'll see like the engagement, like people will be like, oh my God, that happens to me too. Because at the end of the day, each profile, there's a human behind each profile. And we all are very similar, actually. We just don't realize it. And we're all bored to death of the vanilla. It's just that no one says it out loud, and no one's brave enough to sort of move beyond that. Yeah, so that's what I have to say about that. Definitely be authentic, and don't be boring, please.
Awesome. Yeah, great tips and great advice.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to just so people understand like the opportunity on like platforms like LinkedIn, especially. So they're like over 600 million accounts just worldwide. And then half of those people aren't active regularly, but then about 300 million, the other half, are pretty active on there. Like, they're watching content regularly, and only 1 million LinkedIn users post content regularly. So imagine that huge opportunity for like, for building a personal brand. Like, so many people want to take it all in, but like not everyone is brave enough to create the content. Yeah. So huge opportunities for entrepreneurs and anyone who's a creative or has a product or project they're working on.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's brilliant. So people can find you on LinkedIn, of course, and they can find you at ambitioustribe.com as well.
Yes, exactly.
So any kind of final words that you'd like to part with?
Not really. Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm active on Twitter as well. So my name's really unique. So it's just Zviko Masiiwa, and you just Google that and you basically see all my accounts, or Ambitious Tribe. So I'm active on there as well. But good luck to everyone. And I hope that if you take anything away from this, please let it be that you start today. Just start doing something, even if it's something small. That'll really help with your confidence as well. And I think you'll start to see some returns pretty early on. Yeah. Thank you, Gordon, for having me.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure, and thanks very much for your time and for giving all of your insights on everything personal branding. So great to chat with you, Zviko. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye.